My daughter-in-law figured I wouldn't notice when she slipped something into my champagne at my 72nd birthday party. But I did. See, right after I announced that I was giving away 80% of my fortune to charity, Vanessa must have decided she couldn't let that happen. She wanted me gone before I could make it official. The only problem for her was, I saw it all from my bedroom window. While she stepped outside to pick up some fake flowers from the delivery truck, I quietly switched our glasses. When she came back and raised her drink to toast my generosity, she had no clue she was about to sip her own trap. What happened over the next minute left 40 guests frozen in disbelief. Tell me in the comments, do you think people can really change, or does greed just show who they were all along? That evening, the tension around my birthday table wasn't visible to anyone else. But I could feel it pressing down on my chest. As laughter drifted through the garden of my Greenwich mansion, my mind wandered to a conversation that had shifted everything just a week earlier. It was Tuesday afternoon when I called Marcus and Vanessa into my study, the same mahogany-paneled room where I'd built Turner Biotech from the ground up over 4 decades. My son, Marcus, 42, and still comfortably living off the allowance I'd given him since college, sat there looking hopeful. Vanessa, 36, sharp as glass, had quit her pharmaceutical sales job the moment she married into the family. "I've decided to sell the company," I told them calmly. "Turner Biotech will be gone within 6 months." Marcus's eyes practically lit up with dollar signs. "So, when do we start planning the investments?" The silence that followed my next words could have filled the whole room. 80% of the sale will go to the Children's Health Research Foundation. The rest, I went on, will cover your mother's and my retirement, with modest inheritances for you both later on. Vanessa's manicured fingers tightened around her chair until her knuckles turned white. 80%, Richard? That's our family's money. That's Marcus's future. Marcus jumped in, feeding off her outrage. "We've supported you for years, attended every fundraiser, every corporate dinner. You can't just leave us with scraps." The word deserve hung between us like a blade. Here were 2 healthy adults who had chosen dependence over effort, entitlement over ambition. They'd never once asked about the long nights or the missed holidays that built this empire. They only saw the mansion, the cars, the comfort, and assumed it was theirs by birthright. "I'm announcing all this publicly at my birthday party," I added, watching Vanessa's face flush red. "People should know where the foundation's support is coming from." "You're going to humiliate us," she hissed. "Everyone will know you're cutting us out." "No," I said evenly. "You're about to learn the difference between earning something and expecting it." They stormed out that day, doors slamming, tires screeching. I didn't hear from them for a week. Then this morning, Vanessa called. Her voice was all sugar and sympathy, apologizing for the outburst and asking to attend the party to support my generous decision. The sudden sweetness rang hollow. Watching her now, moving among my guests, laughing easily, smiling that well-rehearsed smile, I couldn't help wondering what game she was playing. Vanessa was never one to surrender quietly. She was a woman who always got what she wanted, one way or another. Her years in pharmaceutical sales had made her an expert in reading people, spotting weaknesses, and closing deals most couldn't. She knew chemistry, dosages, side effects, and how to keep her expression calm while working an angle. As she chatted with Dr. Mitchell near the champagne table, I noticed her gaze flicking back to me every few seconds, sharp, calculating, cold behind that charming mask. The same woman who'd been shouting about inheritance a week ago was now pretending to be the perfect daughter-in-law. And after 40 years in business, I'd learned to trust my instincts when they started screaming. Marcus actually seemed sincere that night. He stuck close to me, asking thoughtful questions about the foundation's work, showing an interest I hadn't seen in years. But Vanessa, no, she was playing a different game. I could sense it in the way she moved, always calculating, studying the layout, the timing, the people. Something dangerous was brewing behind that perfect smile. The evening had reached that sweet spot where laughter came easily and conversation flowed like good wine. The October air was cool, the garden glowing beneath strands of warm lights woven through the oak trees. Tables shimmered with autumn flowers, and soft jazz drifted in the background. It really was a beautiful night in Greenwich. Dr. James Mitchell, my business partner of 3 decades, lifted his glass and called out over the chatter, "To the most generous man in Connecticut." Laughter and applause rippled through the crowd. "Turner Biotech didn't just build wealth," he added. "It built character." The toast warmed me. I smiled, surrounded by people who actually understood what mattered, friends like Sarah and David from next door, Rebecca Collins, my attorney, and Father Michael O'Connor from St. Mary's. These were relationships built on respect, not money. For a moment, I almost forgot the tension. Almost. But then I saw her again. Vanessa. Floating through the crowd like she owned it. Complimenting Mrs. Patterson's dress, chatting sweetly with Dr. Mitchell about his upcoming retirement, asking Father O'Connor about his youth program. Every move, every word, polished to perfection. Too perfect. I'd seen that performance before, at charity galas, corporate dinners, anywhere charm could buy influence. But tonight, there was something sharper beneath it all. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Every step seemed measured. Every glance, strategic. Especially toward the champagne table. That's where she kept gravitating, pretending to fuss with the decorations while her eyes flicked to my monogrammed glass. It was a custom gift from the board years ago, the only one like it on the table. Hard to miss, and easy to target. All evening, she'd been watching how I drank. Timing when I took sips, how often I refilled, who held my attention. It wasn't idle curiosity, it was reconnaissance. Then she appeared beside me, glowing with charm. "Richard, you've outdone yourself tonight," she said, her tone warm, practiced. "The garden looks incredible, and that champagne selection? Perfect as always." "Thank you, Vanessa. I'm glad you and Marcus could make it," I replied. Her laugh rang soft and musical, too light to be real. "Of course we came. This is such a big night for you, and for the family. I want everyone to see how proud we are of your generosity." That last word carried an edge so fine most would have missed it. But I caught it. Marcus joined us then, his arm around her shoulders. His expression was open, almost humble. "Dad," he said, "I've been thinking about what you said, the difference between earning something and expecting it. I want to find real work. Maybe in pharmaceuticals. Use what I've learned from growing up around the business." For a second, I felt genuine hope. Maybe my tough love had finally sunk in. Maybe this could be the turning point where my son became the man I'd always hoped for. "I'm proud to hear that," I told him. "There are plenty of companies that would value your experience." Marcus smiled, but when I looked back at Vanessa, her expression hadn't changed. Her lips were still curved in that perfect social smile, but in her eyes, I saw it. Cold. Sharp. Calculating. She didn't want Marcus independent any more than she wanted me alive to sign those donation papers. A husband who worked for a living might start asking questions about where the money came from, about the lifestyle his wife insisted on maintaining. Maybe even about what responsibility really meant. And Vanessa couldn't have that. The jazz quartet wrapped up their set, and for a brief moment the garden quieted. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The caller ID read Children's Health Research Foundation, Dr. Elizabeth Warren. She was the director I'd been coordinating with for weeks about the donation. "Excuse me," I said to a nearby guest, stepping away. "Foundation business." As I headed toward the house, I caught Vanessa's eyes following me. There was nothing casual about it. Her gaze tracked every step like a hawk eyeing its target. I didn't realize it at that moment, but the call I was about to take would hand her the perfect opening she'd been waiting for all night. Upstairs, I walked into my master bedroom and stepped out onto the balcony, quiet, private, and overlooking the entire garden below. It was the perfect place for an important conversation. "Dr. Warren," I said, answering the call. "Please tell me you've got good news." "Excellent news, Richard," she replied cheerfully. "The board unanimously approved the structure. We're ready to receive the funds as soon as Turner Biotech closes." As she talked through the logistics, I leaned on the railing, looking down at the scene below. The garden shimmered under string lights, laughter floating through the air. It was exactly what I'd hoped for, a celebration surrounded by people who'd stood by me over the years. "The publicity will be handled discreetly," Dr. Warren continued. "We respect your wish to keep this low-key." "I appreciate that," I said. "Though I am sharing the news tonight with a few close friends." Below me, the night moved in harmony. Dr. Mitchell and Father O'Connor chatted near the fountain about community projects. The Pattersons admired the rose garden I'd planted in memory of my late wife. Marcus sat listening to the jazz players instead of scrolling through his phone, something I hadn't seen him do in years. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something shifted. Vanessa had drifted to the champagne table again. She stood there with her back to most of the guests, perfectly positioned to block anyone's view. "Richard? Are you still there?" Dr. Warren's voice pulled at my attention. "Yes, I'm here," I said quickly, though my focus was now locked below. Vanessa's left hand lifted the champagne bottle, a perfect excuse. But her right hand slipped into her designer clutch, movements smooth, practiced. Every instinct I had from years in pharmaceuticals kicked in. I knew that kind of precision. She withdrew something small, a packet, no bigger than a sugar sachet. My heart started pounding. "The transfer timeline is flexible," Dr. Warren was saying, but her words barely reached me. Vanessa tore open the packet. Fine white powder fell into my monogrammed crystal flute, dissolving instantly into the bubbles. She stirred it with a cocktail stick, then pocketed both the empty packet and the stirrer in one flawless motion. The whole thing took maybe 15 seconds. Then she turned away, smile still fixed, joining a small group by the fountain as if nothing had happened. No one else noticed a thing. But I had. I had just watched my daughter-in-law try to kill me. "Dr. Warren," I managed, forcing my voice steady, "something urgent's come up. Can we finish this Monday morning?" "Of course," she said. "Is everything all right? You sound shaken." "Shaken," I repeated softly, staring down at Vanessa. "That doesn't even begin to cover it." She just poisoned my drink with the same effortless grace she once used to close pharmaceutical deals. Her pharmaceutical training, the way she knew dosages, how different substances hit the body, which compounds could mimic a natural death, she'd weaponized all of it. After I ended the call, I stood frozen on the balcony, watching Vanessa laugh at Mrs. Patterson's aside like nothing had happened. She looked ordinary, impossibly innocent. But I'd just seen the choreography, the positioning, the practiced hands, the immediate disposal. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment thing. This was planned. The same woman who had screamed about the family's money a week ago had just tried to make sure she inherited every last cent. And she had no idea I'd been watching. I gripped the railing until my knuckles hurt as the full weight of betrayal hit me. The woman who'd called me Dad at Christmas, who'd smiled her way through holiday photos for 3 years, had tried to take my life with the clinical precision of someone used to closing deals. That powder wasn't random. Her sales background had given her access, contacts, and a working knowledge of controlled substances, enough to figure lethal ranges and pick something that could look like a heart attack in a man my age. The scene she'd hoped to stage was obvious: champagne, an emotional announcement, a sudden collapse. People would blame stress, age, celebration. An autopsy might not pick up the right trace. It was cruel and clever. But she'd made one fatal miscalculation: she didn't know I'd seen her do it. This wasn't a crime of passion. the packet had been prepared ahead of time and carried with deliberate intent. She'd studied my habits, marked the moment, and struck with the kind of calm only hours of experience can teach. I ran through options fast and cold. Call the police now, but what proof would I have? The powder had already dissolved. Confront her in front of everyone, she'd deny it and play the worried daughter-in-law, claim I was imagining things after the stress of selling the company. Drink from my glass and hope the dose missed, that was gambling with my life at 72. Ask for medical help and hope it produced evidence, too risky. There was a fourth choice, and it felt like both justice and irony. If she wanted to play with poison, she could be made to taste her own medicine. I could switch the glasses, trade my monogrammed flute for hers, get her away from the champagne table on a believable pretext, and let the scheme collapse under its own weight. When she went down instead of me, the truth would be plain as day. The plan snapped into place with a clarity that surprised me. It was dangerous, precise timing, cool nerves, a showman's calm, but 40 years of competitive business had taught me to think strategically under pressure and to use an opponent's strength against them. Vanessa believed she'd executed the perfect murder. She had no idea she was about to become the victim of her own plot. With my heart pounding and my face fixed in the warm smile of a host, I went down the stairs and back into the party, every step measured, every movement an act. For decades of cutthroat deals taught me how to look unshakable even when my insides were a storm. The party kept its graceful tempo, guests laughing and talking, completely clueless they were witnessing the opening act of an attempted murder. Vanessa stood by the fountain, animatedly chatting with Dr. Mitchell about his recent Mediterranean cruise. Her act was flawless, the picture-perfect daughter-in-law, engaged, charming, not a hint of the lethal calculation I'd seen minutes before. She glanced up as I slipped back into the group and brightened at my approach. "How was your call, Richard?" "Everything with the foundation going well?" she asked. "Very well, thanks," I replied, keeping my tone even and casual. "Dr. Warren sends her regards." I stayed conversational. "Actually, Vanessa, I hate to interrupt, but could you do me a favor?" Her eyes lit with polite interest, already guessing I might ask something that would place her where I needed her. "Of course, Richard. What do you need?" "My old college friend, Robert Martinez, was supposed to come tonight," I explained. "Got held up at an emergency board meeting in Boston and called to apologize. He's sending a big flower arrangement to the front gate as a sorry, should be there any minute." Vanessa's gaze darted to the champagne table where my monogrammed flute sat, then back to my face. I could see the wheels turning. How long would this detour take? Would it mess with her timing? I added, softening the ask, he wanted it placed by the rose garden in memory of Claire. You know how sentimental Robert gets. Mentioning my late wife was deliberate. It made the request harder to refuse without seeming heartless, especially with Dr. Mitchell nearby. "Of course I'll help," she said smoothly, smile steady. "How thoughtful of Robert. What kind of flowers?" "Something spectacular, he always goes big. The driver should be there in minutes. If no one's at the gate in 10, wait and call the florist. I'd be grateful." She squeezed my arm in that practiced way, playing the role perfectly. "I'll wait by the gate," she added. "If no one shows, we'll call." As she walked off, heels clicking on the stone path, I felt a grim satisfaction. She was probably calculating exactly how fast she could handle the errand and be back to keep an eye on my glass. Instead, she was moving away from the very spot that held her crime, giving me the precious minutes I needed to turn her plot back on her. Dr. Mitchell watched her go approvingly. "What a thoughtful young woman. You're lucky to have family like that, Richard." "Yes," I said, watching Vanessa round the corner. "I'm learning exactly how much my family cares." The second she disappeared from sight, I moved toward the champagne table with purpose. My flute sat where I'd left it, bubbly and treacherous. Nearby, Vanessa's distinct crystal glass, with its delicate etching, rested on a cocktail table where she'd set it while talking. It was time to make the most important swap of my life. 7 minutes. That's all I had to save myself and expose a would-be killer. Walking through clusters of guests, nodding and smiling as if nothing were wrong, I closed in on the table where the golden bubbles hid a deadly secret. Vanessa's glass waited on the nearby cocktail table, distinctive crystal with delicate floral etching. I'd given it to her last Christmas. She'd set it down during her chat with Dr. Mitchell, never imagining it would soon hold her own destruction. "Brian, this party is magnificent." Father O'Connor approached with his usual warmth. "The foundation announcement has everyone inspired. Your generosity will change countless lives." "Thank you, Father. That means everything." I lifted my glass, its poisoned weight almost imperceptible yet somehow heavier than lead. "Excuse me a moment, I need to refresh some drinks." As Father O'Connor moved toward the jazz quartet, I carried my glass toward the cocktail table. The party flowed around me, music, laughter, and polite chatter, a perfect cloak for what I was about to do. I positioned myself so my body blocked the view from the crowd. My heart hammered as I tilted my flute, watching the deadly champagne pour into Vanessa's. Golden bubbles slid silently from one crystal to another, carrying her own malice with them. Perfect symmetry. She would drink the very poison she'd prepared for me, from the glass I'd once given her in affection. When her glass was half full, I refilled mine from a fresh bottle, the clean champagne fizzing brightly, pure, innocent, and mercifully safe. "Dad. There you are." Marcus appeared, eyes bright. "I was just telling the Pattersons about your foundation work. They're so impressed. It's important to give back, son." I set my fresh glass down naturally, as if nothing had happened. "Where's Vanessa?" "I wanted her in the toast," Marcus asked. "She's helping with a flower delivery from Robert Martinez," I replied smoothly. "Right. She should be back soon." As if on cue, the sharp rhythm of heels clicked along the stone path. Vanessa appeared, expression faintly annoyed but quickly replaced by her flawless smile. "No sign of any delivery driver," she said lightly. I waited at the gate, but nobody came. "Perhaps a mix-up." "How strange," I answered, with calm sincerity. "Robert was very specific about timing." "No matter, we'll sort it out later. You're back just in time." She tilted her head. "Just in time for what?" "The birthday toast, of course. Everyone's waiting." I gestured toward the gathering crowd. "Your champagne's right there, dear. You might want to refresh it, it's been sitting a while." Vanessa's eyes brightened with quiet satisfaction. In her mind, everything was falling perfectly into place. She moved gracefully toward her glass, lifted it with elegant fingers, and smiled. "Wonderful. I wouldn't miss toasting your generosity for anything." The light from the string lanterns shimmered across her flute, liquid gold, radiant and deadly. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, my voice carrying across the garden with the practiced command of a man who'd spent 40 years leading boardrooms. "If I could have your attention for a moment." The laughter and music softened. 43 faces turned toward me, glowing with affection and expectation, unaware that beneath their raised glasses, death was waiting to be toasted. They had no idea they were about to witness something far more dramatic than a birthday toast. Vanessa stood front and center, her champagne glass poised elegantly in her manicured hand, a radiant smile painting her face. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect daughter-in-law, proud, supportive, devoted. But I knew the truth. In her mind, this was the moment. Surrounded by witnesses, I would drink the poisoned champagne and collapse, a tragic, emotional end to an extraordinary night. "This has been an incredible evening," I began, raising my clean glass. "Sharing this milestone with people who've stood by me through decades of friendship means more than I can express." Dr. Mitchell nodded warmly near the fountain. Father O'Connor clasped his hands together with genuine affection. The Pattersons smiled like proud neighbors. These were good people, the kind who valued community, loyalty, and kindness. As many of you know, I continued, I've decided to donate the majority of the proceeds from the sale of Thompson Pharmaceuticals to the Children's Medical Research Foundation. 80% will fund research that could save countless young lives. Applause filled the air, warm, genuine, heartfelt. Even Vanessa joined in enthusiastically, still unaware that the glass she held now contained her own deadly handiwork. But before we toast this new chapter, I said, my tone shifting subtly, I want to say something about family, about loyalty, about what happens when the people we trust show us who they really are. A flicker of unease crossed Vanessa's face. Her perfect smile faltered. Family, I went on, should celebrate each other's successes, support each other's dreams, and protect one another from harm. My eyes locked on hers. They shouldn't try to poison each other. The crowd rippled with confusion. Murmurs spread. Guests looked at one another, unsure whether they'd heard me correctly. Vanessa's color drained. Brian, she said carefully, her voice trembling at the edges, what are you talking about? Are you feeling all right? I'm feeling perfectly fine, Vanessa. Better than I have in years, I replied evenly, lifting my glass higher. Because I finally understand who my real family is. And it's not always the people who share your blood, or your name. She hesitated, then raised her glass too, maybe thinking she could still salvage the plan, that if I drank with her, no one would ever know. The golden champagne touched her lips. Vanessa, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the now silent garden, I hope you enjoy that drink as much as you thought I would. She froze mid-sip, her eyes wide with horror as realization hit. You see, I continued calmly, I watched you add that powder to my glass while I was on the phone with Dr. Warren. Watched you stir it in, pocket the evidence, and walk away, believing you'd just committed the perfect murder. Her face twisted, panic, rage, disbelief, all in one. She jerked the glass from her lips, but it was too late. She'd already swallowed enough to damn herself. The only flaw in your plan, I said softly, was that you didn't know I was watching from the bedroom balcony. So, I made a small adjustment, transferred your little gift into your own glass. The crystal flute slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering against the stone terrace. The champagne splashed across the floor, glinting under the string lights, golden, toxic, final. The garden fell silent, every breath held. What you just drank, my dear daughter-in-law, I said, my voice low but steady, was your own murder weapon. The shattered crystal lay strewn across the stone terrace like fragments of fallen stars, each jagged piece catching the string lights and throwing them back in sharp, accusing flashes. For a heartbeat, the entire garden went still. 43 guests stood frozen, their faces blank with shock, struggling to absorb what they had just witnessed. Vanessa's hand flew to her throat. Her complexion flickered between deathly pale and blotched crimson as panic bled through her carefully curated calm. You're insane, she managed, her voice quivering instead of cutting. This is some kind of breakdown, Marcus, your father needs help. But Marcus wasn't looking at me. He was staring at her, his brow furrowing as puzzle pieces he'd ignored for years began snapping into place. Vanessa, what is he talking about? What powder? Dr. Mitchell stepped forward next, his training eclipsing his shock. Brian, if what you're saying is true, we need to call emergency services immediately. What substance are we dealing with? I don't know the compound exactly, I said, my voice even despite the chaos rising around me. But I know it came from a small packet she pulled from her purse. Something engineered to mimic natural causes in a 72-year-old man. Vanessa's knees sagged and she clutched at the back of a chair to steady herself. Whether it was the poison beginning its work or sheer terror, her composure was gone. It's not true, she whispered, but even she seemed to hear how hollow her denial sounded. Father O'Connor moved closer, his pastoral instinct overriding his disbelief. My child, if you're in danger, We need to get you medical help. I'm not your child, Vanessa snapped, her voice sharp enough to make people flinch. The words seemed to stun even her. The mask she'd worn for years was peeling away, exposing the predator beneath. Sarah Patterson's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. I'm calling 911. No. Vanessa lunged at her, wild with desperation. Don't call anyone. There's nothing wrong with me, he's the one having some kind of episode. But her panic told its own story. Any innocent person would demand paramedics, demand tests to prove their innocence. Vanessa's terror of outside scrutiny confirmed exactly what my guests needed to understand. Marcus stepped toward her slowly, his expression fractured with disbelief. Your old job, the pharmaceutical knowledge, he said quietly. You always bragged that you understood medications better than most doctors. Marcus, don't listen to him, she pleaded. Your father is sick, this charity thing, the stress, it's warped his mind. Then why are you terrified of the paramedics? Marcus's voice cracked. If Dad's having a breakdown, medical help would prove it. He stopped abruptly as the full weight of what he was realizing hit him like a physical blow. Rebecca Collins, my attorney, stepped forward with calm, professional authority. Everyone needs to stay calm and preserve the area. If a crime has been committed, we cannot contaminate evidence. Crime? Vanessa spat, whirling on her like a cornered animal. What crime? A crazy old man makes wild accusations and suddenly I'm a criminal. The crazy old man, I said, keeping my tone calm but cutting, built a pharmaceutical empire by understanding exactly how medications work. The crazy old man, of course, also had 43 witnesses who had just seen her panic when confronted with her own actions. Dr. Mitchell studied her with clinical precision, elevated heart rate, trembling, beads of sweat forming along her hairline. Symptoms consistent with either extreme fear or the early stages of poisoning. How much did you swallow? He asked. I didn't swallow anything, Vanessa said, her voice sharp but unconvincing. Even as she spoke, her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, and I saw the terror deepen in her eyes. The poison was beginning to take hold. Marcus took a step back, his face twisting in shock, betrayal, and disgust. Oh God, Vanessa, what have you done? What have you done? He whispered. The woman who had spent 3 years playing the perfect daughter-in-law finally dropped the facade. What I had to do, she screamed. Do you understand what it's like to watch millions of dollars thrown away on strangers? That money was supposed to be ours. Her confession hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Every guest had heard it, every guest now a witness to her motives, her attempted murder, her greed. There it is, I said softly. The truth, at last. Within minutes, the paramedics arrived, flashing lights painting the elegant garden in red and blue. What had begun as a celebration of generosity had become a crime scene, complete with witness statements and evidence collection. Vanessa was loaded onto a stretcher, conscious but weak, the effects of her own poison leaving no ambiguity. Shakespeare himself couldn't have written a more poetic justice. She turned her head toward Marcus, desperation in her eyes. I did it for us, she whispered. For our future. Marcus stood frozen, watching the woman he'd loved transform into a stranger before his eyes. There is no us anymore, Vanessa, I said quietly. There never was. Just you, and your greed. Dr. Mitchell briefed the paramedics on her likely symptoms, while Rebecca Collins coordinated with police officers on the scene. My guests, once partygoers, had now become witnesses, providing detailed accounts of the shocking evening. I can't believe I never saw it, Marcus said, tears glistening. 3 years of marriage, and I didn't realize what she was capable of, how she pushed me for money, calculated every interaction. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so incredibly sorry. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of his genuine remorse. You're not responsible for her choices, Marcus. But you are responsible for your own from this moment forward. I know, he said, voice firm despite emotion. And I meant what I said earlier. I want to earn my place in the world, not inherit it, certainly not through violence. He looked around at the crime scene tape, the paramedics, the officers. Will you ever forgive me for bringing her into our family? Son, I replied gently, you fell in love with the person she pretended to be. That's human nature, not a crime. The real question is what you do with this knowledge now. As the police wrapped up their preliminary investigation, my friends approached, their faces full of concern and admiration. Father O'Connor was the first to speak. Brian, your composure throughout this ordeal has been remarkable. To think clearly enough to protect yourself, that takes extraordinary presence of mind. Dr. Mitchell nodded in agreement. 40 years of business negotiations prepared you well for high-stakes situations. Most people would have panicked or confronted her immediately. Most people, I said quietly, haven't spent decades learning to think 3 moves ahead of their opponents. Sarah Patterson squeezed my arm gently. You kept everyone safe. And you did it without anyone realizing a thing until the truth came out. Incredible. I allowed myself a small smile, the weight of the night still pressing, but relief settling into my chest. The danger had passed. The lesson had been taught. And at last, justice had been served. What you've been through tonight, the betrayal, the danger, would have broken most people. But you turned it into justice. As the evening wound down and the last police officer departed, I found myself standing in my garden with the people who truly mattered. Not the largest group, but the most genuine. Marcus had chosen to stay, helping me clean up the remnants of what should have been a perfect celebration. The foundation donation will proceed as planned, I told the remaining friends. Tonight proved that generosity isn't just about money. It's about knowing who deserves your trust, and who has earned their place in your life. Rebecca Collins gathered her purse, preparing to leave. I'll handle all the legal matters, Brian, attempted murder charges, divorce proceedings if Marcus chooses, updating your will to reflect tonight's revelations. Thank you, Rebecca, I said, smiling. Though I think my will is exactly as it should be. Tonight hasn't changed my commitment to helping children. If anything, it strengthened it. As the last guests departed, Marcus and I sat together on the terrace where his wife had tried to end my life just hours earlier. The string lights still twinkled overhead, but the atmosphere had shifted entirely. What happens now, Dad? He asked. Now we rebuild, I replied. You find meaningful work, contribute something positive to the world. I proceed with the foundation donation and enjoy retirement surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. I looked at my son and saw potential there for the first time in years. We both understood the difference between family you're born with and family you choose. I want to be worthy of being chosen, he said slowly. Then you already are, son. The rest is just proving it to yourself. The evening hadn't ended with the tragedy Vanessa had planned, but with the clarity that only comes from surviving betrayal and choosing justice over revenge. Sometimes the best way to give someone a taste of their own medicine is simply to let them drink it themselves. Sometimes the deepest betrayal teaches the most profound lessons about human nature and divine justice. What I experienced that night wasn't just about money or greed. It was about discovering who truly deserves your trust and love. God has a way of revealing people's true character when they think no one is watching. Standing on that balcony, witnessing Vanessa's calculated evil, I realized He had given me the wisdom to protect not just my life, but my legacy of generosity. Have you ever faced betrayal in your family? If so, take these lessons to heart. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories, hitting the notification bell so you never miss these powerful lessons about faith, family, and justice.